All right, welcome back to the Young Turks. You got a Kasparian, everybody. I say welcome back to the Young Turks, to myself mainly, because I'm back.
Hey, Cenk, welcome.
That's an old Eminem reference. Okay.
No, I know that.
Yeah, okay, yeah, your hair looks good. Mine, on the other hand, is the fluffiest hair you've ever seen. And this is what happens when you can't get a haircut during a campaign.
You know that gel or hairspray exists.
I do, and I've applied it, and it still won't stay down. Okay, that's some good Mediterranean hair right there. All right, guys, obviously big news about Super Tuesday. Equally obviously, Bloomberg dropping out. We'll get to all of those details, very, very important. But we're gonna have some fun in the third hour. Third hour, we will finally get to discuss my congressional race. So we had a lot of restrictions while I was running. We no longer have those restrictions because I have lost. So if you didn't see the news yesterday, it was pretty badly. Okay, so lessons learned. What can we use to help progressives based on what I learned from the campaign? We'll begin to have that conversation. What were some of the backstories to the campaign? Drums. Okay, so we'll do the first half in the conversation like we normally do, freely available to everybody. The second half we'll save for the members to get to some more juicy stuff. And I'll preview one thing for you guys, which is the downside is we didn't get to do the dreams that we wanted, which would have been amazing to go into Congress, kick some ass, etc. The upside is that I'm now free, and I'll be back on old school, and we will
Yes! God, I totally forgot about that.
Yes. Okay, and speaking of old school, at one point, probably about 5 years ago, I talked about how at some point in my life, I would enter the no holds barred portion of my life. We might have just entered that. Okay, so that conversation begins in the third hour of the show. As always, the last half hour always for members, tyt.com/join to become a member. And yes, we're doing a campaign to raise money. Yes, we absolutely need it. That's tyt.com/go. We'll give you an update on that very soon in the show. But speaking of the show, let's do it.
Yeah, before we get to the stories though, I want to take just a quick moment to thank John Iadarola for really stepping up. I mean, he's got this insane workload already, and with Cenk running for Congress, he agreed to be, my default co-host. I didn't want to have a revolving panel. I'm just keeping it real with you guys. I wanted some consistency, and I wanted someone that I could rely on every single day, and John was that person. He did such a great job, and I just want to thank him. And I'm very lucky to work with him every day. He's still doing the damage report, of course. He's still with the network, and he'll still be on the main show, I'm sure, a lot, because Cenk will be absent a lot anyway. But John's awesome.
So first of all, whatevs. Second of all, so what, you want to take my job, John? Is that what it is? Okay. No, seriously, let me quadruple down on what Anna said. You know what John Iadarola is? He's a rock.
He is.
Okay.
He's a good person.
He's a great person, he's a great host, and so he's great for this network. Everyone should be lucky enough to have a John Iadarola in their life, okay? That dude's a rock, so thanks, John, we appreciate it. And now, speaking of editorial control, I will take command and control back now. So save for the third hour,
Yeah, I have a lot to say on that.
John, you missed the nice things we said about you for the first time ever in TYT history. You just went in the control room. You missed it by this much. Luckily, you're a member. Rewind and you'll see it.
And it's okay. Now we can go back to poking fun at him, which is what happens on the show. Anyway. Right. All right, let's get to the stories. So now that Super Tuesday is over, we felt that it was important to do a postmortem, but also think of what the strategy should be moving forward for progressives, particularly for Bernie Sanders, who still has a very good shot at winning the Democratic nomination. So for all of you out there who are discouraged today, get over it quickly, because now is the time to fight, and now is the time to do so aggressively. First, let's go over what the results of last night were. First off, we need to know what the total delegate count looks like thus far in the race. And Biden does have the lead. He is the front runner, but the lead isn't really that big. So he has 513 of the pledged delegates so far. Bernie comes in at second with 461, and then Warren comes in at third with 47. Now there have been some rumors, some whispers that Warren could be dropping out soon. We'll see how that plays out, but for now she's still in the race.
Okay, I got to jump in on that delegate count. So first, the usual establishment Democrat and mainstream media hypocrisy. When Bernie Sanders had the lead after the first 3 states, after the first 4 states, they were like, no, not a front runner, no way, no, not, okay, we really call him a front, no, right? The minute Biden takes the lead, a tiny lead, as you just saw there in the delegate count, they have to go all the way to 1,991. So it's anybody's ballgame. We got Florida, Michigan, New York, so many things coming up, right? They're like, nope, that's it. I think Bernie should drop out. I mean, why is he extending this? He has no road to winning. Are you serious? And they say it with a straight face. That's why I'm done with the mainstream media. I mean, I'll go on and I'll talk to them, but we have to call them the brazen hypocrites that they are.
So you know how I feel about the mainstream media. I have very similar feelings. However, I think that it's important to give credit where credit is due. So while MSNBC has its regular anti-Bernie programming, and while people like James Carville are urging everyone in the Democratic race to drop out, including Bernie Sanders, of course, I was just listening to the New York Times podcast, The Daily, and they were really honest. They're like, no, Bernie still has a really good shot at winning this.
Okay, well then let me go further. Okay, yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that because unlike the mainstream media, we're fair. We give you what they do right and wrong. So what is this talk of, does Bernie have a chance? Here, put up the delegate count again. It's nearly tied. They have to get to 1,991. All Bernie has to do is win one more state and he's back in the lead. What are you guys talking about? Like, they're making it sound like Bernie's at like Klobuchar level at 7 or something. And by the way, another important point about that is all this talk of like a brokered convention. All of a sudden, Biden takes the lead. No more talk of brokered convention. Now, is anybody asking on TV? Well, I mean, if Biden's goes in with a lead, but he doesn't have 50%, I guess we should probably find a way to give it to Bernie. No, that talk has ended immediately. Second of all, what brokered convention? Put up the graphic one more time. There's only 2 people in this race. Warren is barely still in the race because she's talking to staff about maybe dropping out. She is 47. None of them are going to have any delegates. A brokered convention happens when there are not 2 major candidates. When there's a whole bunch of candidates, and that guy got 37, the other one got 38, and the other one got 12 stuff. No, the other candidates, delegates are de minimis. They won't be relevant unless it's razor thin. So no, we got a 2-person race. It's anybody's ball game. Last thing on that. Hey, mainstream media, we love to do things ahead of time. You love to be hypocrites. So if Bernie retakes the lead, and mainly to establishment Democrats, James Carville and all those guys, I'm talking to you. If Bernie retakes the lead, will you have the same position? Will you say, well, now that Bernie's the front runner, Biden should drop out?
We all know what the answer is, right?
Yeah.
So do you want to do just a quick breakdown of all the different states from Super Tuesday, and who won those states and by how much? Because remember, these are not winner-take-all races. So even if the majority of voters in any given state prefer Joe Biden over Bernie, the fact of the matter is Bernie will still win delegates in that state. So let's get to some of those specifics. So let's start with the states that Joe Biden did win: Alabama, Arkansas, Maine, Massachusetts, Minnesota, North Carolina, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Texas, Virginia. It's a lot of states, right?
It is, and that's why he's in the back of the ballgame. And again, unlike the rest of the media, we're super fair. The minute Joe Biden started winning states that we didn't expect, we're like, oh, he's having a great night. This is now a 2-person race. By the end of the night, we were saying, no, Biden won Super Tuesday. He's now in the lead. Let's keep it real, right? Because we can do math. And Emma reported that from Bernie's headquarters. We all universally agreed because again, it's not complicated. But I gotta say one thing about Joe Biden's so-called strength. Some of those states are very relevant. Some will be blue no matter what, like Massachusetts. And some are more toss-ups, like Virginia, and very important in the general election. But most of them are in the South. And they're like, Joe Biden's strength's in Alabama, so I think maybe he could beat Trump in Alabama? No.
Or Arkansas.
No. So Minnesota is relevant too. So keep it real. It's across the board. But most of those states are states that Joe Biden will have absolutely 0% chance of winning in the general election.
Correct. When it comes to the states that Bernie Sanders won, California, of course, is a huge state to win. And luckily, Bernie Sanders did win that state. Then you have Colorado, Utah, and Vermont.
I mean, look, now Bernie wins the largest state in the union, and he does it by a good margin. And all the people who said Bernie Sanders had no chance, laughed at him, mocked him, etc., for the entirety of this campaign and the one before, he wins California, and they're like, he didn't win it by enough. He didn't win it by enough. That's not true. Okay, you have nothing but excuses. We're fair about how Biden had a great night last night. Is definitely back in it. We got a 2-person race. Are they equally fair? Sometimes, like Anna pointed out, the New York Times did a good job with the Daily, and oftentimes not.
So let's go to a breakdown of each individual state just to show you how much they won. Now, again, in Alabama, Joe Biden did win in that state. He had 63.37%. Now, that was a huge lead over Bernie Sanders. So in Alabama, Bernie unfortunately received 16.81%. But to Cenk's point, Alabama is a state in the general election that will go to Trump.
Yeah. So I'll go through the rest of them real quick.
Sure.
So Alabama, easy win for Biden, congrats to him, but also easy win for the Republicans in general. Arkansas, same exact thing, not as big a margin, but still a big margin. 40-22 basically for Biden. California, Bernie wins 33.6 to 22.7. So that's a healthy 11-point win in the biggest state, which means that is a lot more delegates that you pick up. With that size of a win in that biggest state. Colorado, Bernie wins 36-23. Maine, Biden squeaks out a victory there, went back and forth all night, 34-33 basically. Massachusetts, Biden at 33.5, Bernie at 27. That one could have been closer. Now, a lot of people say, let's pause there. Elizabeth Warren, if she had dropped out and endorsed Bernie, Bernie might have won Massachusetts. I actually think that was way more relevant in 2016 because at that point, Massachusetts would have made a big difference in momentum. I think Bernie could have also maybe won Iowa, which was a squeaker in 2016. Now, if you make the argument that Bernie would have won Massachusetts if Warren had dropped out, you have to be honest and say, yeah, but Biden probably would have won a lot of states or done better in a lot of states if Bloomberg had dropped out earlier. So be fair on both sides of that. Minnesota, Biden winning a state he wasn't necessarily supposed to win a couple of days ago, but Klobuchar's endorsement made a big difference there. So 38.5 to 30. North Carolina, big win again for Biden, 43.7 to 24.5. Oklahoma, a closer contest, interestingly, but still a sizable win, 38.6 to 25.4. Tennessee, another sizable win, 41.8 to 25 for Biden. And Texas, we wanted to win Texas. Texas was important, but we didn't. Oh wait, let me do mainstream media. Now that we lost Texas, Texas has always been irrelevant. What's the big deal? I mean, it was solely the 3rd largest state in the country. Who cares? No, it was important, and Biden won it. Beto O'Rourke might have helped him there, but certainly all the momentum helped him. So 34 to 30, basically. Last couple here, Utah, Bernie wins comfortably 34 to 17. Vermont, obviously, wins comfortably 50 to 22. And then Virginia, also an important state, and he won big. Biden won big there by 30 points.
So I just want to make one quick comment about Utah. Remember, Utah is a state that was dealing with homelessness, especially in Salt Lake City, and they just decided to give the homeless housing with no strings attached. And the program worked. So I bring that up because in the context of this race, there's a lot of religious people living in Utah, a lot of Mormons living in Utah, but they also understand that some of the progressive policies do in fact work. They had the privilege to experience them firsthand. So I think that's the reason why you see such a huge margin for Bernie in Utah.
Yeah, and finally, guys, now we got trench warfare, 2 major candidates, just like 2016, and we're gonna go state to state to state to state, okay? So next Tuesday, here we go again. Don't miss a minute of it. We're gonna do it right here on TYT. Idaho, Michigan, which is gigantic, Mississippi, Missouri, really important, North Dakota, the state of Washington. State of Washington is a large state. Bernie has nice leads in the West normally. We'll see what kind of momentum they have going into March 10th. And then next Tuesday after that, March 17th, top of the morning to you, St. Patty's Day. We're gonna do Arizona, Florida, Illinois, Ohio. Gigantic. This race is nowhere near over. 2 enormous weeks left to go here, and then many more. But those 2 weeks are really important. Last thing on it, debates. Now we might have mano a mano, likely. Bernie versus Biden. Can Biden finish a debate?
Well, you know how I feel about Biden's debate performance, and it has nothing to do, well, it has a lot to do with substance, but it has more to do with his inability to speak coherently, right? So I think the big question is, will there be a debate that's compelling enough to make an impact by March 17th, right?
Yeah, so we're gonna have to see. And look, the debates sometimes make a giant difference. When Elizabeth Warren eviscerated Mike Bloomberg, he lost his momentum in all those states, and now he's dropped out. So remember, the presidential race has more free media than anything else in the world. So even Bloomberg, with his whole fortune, having spent $500 million on ads, couldn't buy the race because the debates were so important. So now Bernie versus Biden, the whole country's gonna watch those debates. And if Biden struggles to speak in complete sentences, it's going to be a real issue. And I guarantee you that the online media is not going to let it go, no matter how much the mainstream media covers up for Biden. Those are not gaffes. Those are significant issues with his mental faculties. That's just a fact. And Trump will eviscerate him on that stuff in the general election. So let's go, game on.
All right, well, we're gonna take a break, and when we come back, I think it's really important to show you a video that features veterans confronting Biden over his pro-war record. And then later in the show, we will talk about Michael Bloomberg's decision to drop out of the Democratic primary race. We'll be right back.
We hope you're enjoying this free clip from the Young Turks. If you wanna get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meantime, enjoy this free segment. All right, back on the Young Turks. So let me read some of your comments, and I want to make some points related to those. Mucho Horses writes in, member section.
That means many horses.
Oh, really? Okay.
Just letting you know.
Okay, now I know.
3 years of Spanish, not a big deal.
Nah, look, man. I did talk. I did try to talk Spanish at some of the doors that I was knocking on during the campaign. So I picked up some things. I know mucho. Anyway, Mucho Horses writes, the stock market went up 1,400 points today with health insurance companies leading the way. The rich are betting they are going to get richer.
Well, to that point, Bernie Sanders is pushing for a debate ASAP on healthcare with Joe Biden.
Oh yeah, on his healthcare? On his health, period? Okay, no, that's great, I would love that. Riffmaster says, wait, Cenk has been barring some holds until now? Oh, she. Okay, a little bit. Uber Progressive says, I'm far more discouraged by congressional races we lost than the presidential race. I hear you, brother or sister. So look, I lost last night, but I think that we picked up some lessons learned, which is really important, which we'll talk about in the third hour. Yes, I'm very discouraged that Jessica Cisneros lost to Cuellar. On the other hand, I think that his days are numbered. So I'll explain why. It's not just rando hope. There's a reason why. It also relates to my race. Let's do that in the third hour. And Mike Siegel won. He's on to a runoff in Texas. So certainly some progressives won. And no holds barred Uygur writes in already. Okay, that's a handle. Question, Cenk, if Warren endorses Bernie at the convention, can she transfer her delegates to Bernie? Yes, and in fact, Mayor Bill de Blasio was on the show yesterday, and he was making the case that they should pledge delegates to one another ahead of time, since they're the progressive wing, we hope. And last one, David Johnson says, donated on YouTube Super Chat, donated for the 4th time today for the Bernie campaign. Only real citizens will beat Citizens United windfall candidates like Biden and other corporate meat puppets. I agree. There's so many more comments, but I just want to say, and some that included our fundraising drive, which I appreciate you guys bringing up. We did begin that yesterday. It is absolutely pivotal. I was trying to get to 100,000 on the first day, which would have been amazing. We're trying to get 2 million overall for the rest of the year. That's 200,000 a month. It would have been great to get the first half of March on the first day. That would be the first day that we launched it. But come on, too much. Let's take a look at the thermometer. 95,263.
You guys are amazing.
Okay, look, you've kept us on air year after year after year. Sometimes people wonder, well, like, how the hell are you guys surviving in digital media when no one else can do it? You guys, that's it.
You guys, and it has been really tough. So thank you for supporting us.
Yeah, one person in the business context said, it feels like you guys can survive a nuclear fallout, right? And again, they were wondering why. Like, because you guys want us on the air. If the minute you don't,
gone.
It's nice knowing you. Anyway, so tyt.com/go. Thank you guys.
Real quick, speaking of what the audience wants, I do want to read one quick TYT live from Eclectic Miscellanea. So is Cenk Uygur still demoted to co-host status? I think he should have to fight to earn his spot back for main host status and editorial control over the main show. Anna Kasparian, you need to have some demands before giving him back the reins. And Chip Wuha says, do I smell an audience poll? I don't know.
Okay, with this hair, how could I lose?
Yeah,
okay,
that's great, Jake.
Anyway, we'll talk more about it in the third hour.
Let's get to the rest of the news. So, Joe Biden was confronted and accused of having blood on his hand by veterans who are concerned about his pro-war voting record. Now, this occurred during a campaign stop in Oakland, California. Let's hear what the veterans had to say.
We're just wondering why we should focus on voted for a war and kill thousands of our brothers and sisters. Countless Iraqis. You also gave a medal to a man who enabled that war and caused that war. His blood is on your hands as well. And you're disqualified. You're disqualified. My friends are dead.
So is my son who was in Iraq. Okay? For years. That doesn't matter, right? You don't think it matters to you. It matters a lot to you.
I'm sure it does. Okay. And I'm not going after your son.
You better not.
I'm not. No, I'm not going after your son. You were disqualified, sir. Disqualified. The blood is on your hands. Blood is on your hands. No. My brothers and sisters died in Iraq and Afghanistan. And he enabled that to happen. He enabled that to happen. He is disqualified. He is disqualified. No way he can be president. They are dead. Millions are dead in Iraq. He will not be allowed to be president. Disqualified. Trump is more anti-war than Joe.
So his pro-war votes in the past are certainly, weaknesses that have been talked about by his political opponents, even in this Democratic primary race. In fact, Bernie Sanders, on the eve of Super Tuesday, put out a campaign ad that focused on Biden's pro-war record. Let's take a quick look at that.
Contrary to what some in my party might think, Iraq was a problem that had to be dealt with.
Weapons of mass destruction.
Weapons of mass destruction.
Weapons of mass destruction.
Weapons of mass destruction.
We thought he had weapons of mass destruction. It turns out he didn't, but
I never believed what Cheney and Bush said about Iraq.
I'm an Iraq veteran. I shipped to Iraq exactly 6 days after the war started. As a veteran, I didn't see a lot of Trump children or other rich kids in the military. The military is all people from middle class and lower middle class backgrounds. Those are the people that go to fight the wars. I remember all the ginning up towards the war in Iraq, and I see the same thing now.
Soleimani was plotting
imminent and sinister attacks on American diplomats and military personnel.
We have every expectation that people not only in Iraq, but in Iran will view the American action last night as giving them freedom.
Well, I support Bernie Sanders because he doesn't take money from the defense contractors. He hasn't been meeting with people to start the wars. He's been meeting with people to fight the wars. Bernie Sanders meets with working class families who have had family members who have fought in Iraq. They show him what it's like when you come back from a war. If you don't meet with those people, you don't understand that kind of hardship.
And moving forward in this primary race, I think it's incredibly important to look back to 2016 and see the types of attacks that Trump successfully used against his opponent, Hillary Clinton. He talked about her vote for the Iraq war over and over again, and that certainly helped him. It wasn't the top issue that helped him, but it was a big part of why people were ready for someone who was anti-establishment and someone who might be a wild card, might be a complete and utter disaster, but people didn't want the status quo. So look, for all the Democrats voting in these primary races, keep that in mind. Think about the weaknesses and the vulnerabilities that someone like Joe Biden has and how that will hurt him if he ends up being the Democratic nominee.
Yeah, so look, I don't, you're gonna be surprised by this. I don't love the over-the-top confrontation.
I do.
Yeah.
It's time.
You wouldn't be surprised by that. And so the guy yelling, "You're disqualified, you're disqualified," it's a little tough to deal with. On the other hand, when he's giving him a heartfelt explanation in the beginning about why he was worried about Biden's vote, et cetera, these politicians, they never have good answers, right? And I just did this. So not that I did it successfully electorally, but if you watch any of the videos of me interacting with voters, it's not that hard. Say to them, "Hey, listen, brother, I regret that vote. So you're right to be concerned about it, and I wish I hadn't done it. And here's what I thought." And just be human for a second. Just be human. And I won over a lot of folks by being human. But politicians, no, I don't want a bad moment, et cetera. And no, but not answering the guy's question to me is a bad moment. And most importantly here, are we gonna have a conversation about policy or are we not? So this is a giant presidential race. So both sides have plenty of name recognition. They're both really well known. Well, now we're at the point where, okay, what does Biden think about foreign policy? What does Bernie think about foreign policy? That is monumentally important when you're picking a president. I know, again, TV pundits always say like the policy's not important, don't talk about who the horse race, et cetera, but never talk about policy. We're electing a president of the United States, commander in chief, the most powerful person on earth. How could that not be important? I mean, what an empty shell of a person and pundit you are if you think that this shouldn't be something that we discuss. And here they have giant differences, not just the Iraq war. Biden has supported the hawks over and over and over again. His mindset is, well, I mean, look, we've got to assert American power, which means get into stupid, senseless wars. Bernie obviously doesn't agree with that. Enormous difference. Put aside all the other nonsense, vote on policy because it's going to affect your life. It might be your kids that we send to the next war that Biden starts.
So Biden has struggled to answer any questions about his previous votes, his pro-war votes, because his pro-war votes are indefensible. So with Iraq, what have we heard from Biden so far? His number one line of defense is, I trusted Bush, and would you look at that? He lied to us. He lied to me. I was disappointed that he lied to me. What are you talking about? I mean, are you a leader or not? Because if you want to lead a country, if you just simply believe anything anyone tells you, that's not what a leader does. A leader digs in for him or herself to try to figure out what the best course of action is. Yeah. And so that was an incredibly weak defense. And look, I usually would say that I don't like aggressive confrontation where someone's yelling at another person, like, because you don't get anything accomplished. But as you mentioned correctly, it started off calm. That is a veteran. That is a type of person, by the way, that politicians love to exploit for their own political gain, right? Oh, we care about the veterans. Oh, we support the troops. Oh, we want to do everything we can to improve the VA. They'll exploit that demographic for political gain. But look at this. This was an opportunity for Joe Biden to speak to a veteran in a calm way and answer the questions that this veteran deserves answers to, right? And then he walks away. He tries to change the conversation about what happened to the men and women who lost their lives in Iraq to Joe Biden's son. And then he just walked away. So guess what? If I was that passionate about anything and a politician just walked away, turned his back and walked away from me like that, I would yell too. I would be frustrated and I would be angry.
Yeah. The funny thing is, the minute the veterans don't agree with right-wing propaganda, then they become inconvenient.
Totally.
And so I love veterans standing up for themselves who are sick of the wars and sick of their friends dying in endless and senseless wars. What do we get out of Iraq? What do we get out of Afghanistan? Can anyone answer that question? Even Trump's running against it. At least pretending. What we lost, other than that, all of that blood that veteran's talking about, and all those guys that died on our side and Iraqi civilians, $6.4 trillion. Hey, Joe, how are you gonna pay for that? Hey, look, is there gonna be any accountability for any establishment politician? So they asked Bernie Sanders nonstop, how are you gonna pay for Medicare for all when it actually costs less money? Joe, how are you gonna make up the $6.4 trillion in the wars that you authorized that we got nothing from? Nothing at all.
Right.
All we had was loss. Joe, where are you gonna find that $6.4 trillion? What a monumental mistake. So lastly, Biden's excuses, I trusted George Bush and Dick Cheney. Well, I think that's disqualifying. I mean, if you're so unintelligent that you thought Dick Cheney had good intentions and you trusted him, that's like Trump saying, I trusted Putin. I thought he was a good guy, so whatever he says, I agree. Cheney is on the same level. I mean, you could agree with him policy-wise, but if you think he's like a good guy who's just, golly gee, I'm just giving it to you like it is, and you go, oh my God, I trust him, then you're a moron.
So I have to give you one specific quote from Biden, and this was to the lead up to the Iraq war. This was when he was encouraging his fellow senators to vote in favor of the Iraq invasion, okay? So let me just note, 77 senators did vote in favor of it, meaning not every senator was on board, right? There were senators like Barbara Boxer at the time who were like, do we believe that there are weapons of mass destruction? Are we really gonna go in this path? And here's the type of answer that Joe Biden would give them. He said, quote, at each pivotal moment, Biden said of Bush, he has chosen a course of moderation and deliberation.
Oh my God.
And I believe he will continue to do so. At least that is my fervent hope.
Look, again, even if you believe Joe Biden, that he's not doing it because he has a right-wing mindset, he's a hawk, he gets money from defense contractors. Okay, let's say none of that is true. Then he really is the most gullible, aw shucks idiot I've ever seen in politics. Like, oh, I think George Bush is a moderate who's being deliberate, and golly gee, I think that Bush and Cheney are gonna continue to do that. Really? No way, that's way more disqualifying them. Your intelligence is, way under 100, your IQ. We can't have someone that dumb as commander in chief. We already had one guy like that, we have him now, and it's been an absolute disaster.
Jake, if someone came to me and said, you need to make a decision right now, okay? And the decision that you make could, it could lead to the deaths of or a death. One person could die if you make the wrong decision. Cenk, someone who you trust and you have a good relationship with, believes that you should say yes to what I'm proposing. Do you think that I would just be like, oh, I believe and trust in Cenk, so I'm just gonna say yes? Hell no, hell no. If people's lives are on the line, I am gonna make sure that I make the right decision. And that doesn't mean that I'm just gonna simply believe someone, even if it's someone that I do actually trust and have a good relationship with.
Let alone, instead of one person, 37 people. Could you imagine 37 people in a room all dying? Wait a minute, how about 700,000 people? And take away someone you trust and insert Sean Hannity. Well, I think, Sean Hannity is gonna moderate, has been moderate and deliberate. Sean Hannity, oh, well, that's an extreme example. George Bush, George W. Bush, there was nothing moderate or deliberate about George W. Bush. He proudly said, I don't do nuance. He was massively conservative. And besides which, you didn't know Dick Cheney was a big part of that? And you think Dick Cheney was moderate and deliberate? Dick Cheney is worse than Sean Hannity, saying, well, I just trusted that Dick Cheney would have everybody's best interest in mind. And so there was hundreds of thousands of people's lives on the line. So I trusted Dick Cheney. Totally disqualifying.
We got to take a break. When we come back, though, we're not done with Joe Biden yet. The Trump campaign has decided that Biden is going to be the front runner, so they've already given us a glimpse in how they plan to attack him, and they've got a lot of good material. We'll show you what it is when we return.